progress, very much like meter, and people, when they first start working with HTML5, they're like, why don't we have both? Well, progress is actually meant to notify the user, give them an update of what's going on, whereas a meter might be something they actually interact with. And you notice there's a tag called Ruby, and then RT and RP. And one might think, ooh, Ruby programming, where are the Python tags? No, that's not what this is about, guys. The Ruby tags are actually for allowing other languages to be displayed. For example, not only do we have like English, but we could also have Chinese above it. And with the RP, we can choose to spell out how it should be pronounced. And then RT, of course, with Ruby annotation. So these are additional tags that are just for internationalizing your site. Continuing on, going a little over an hour here so far, let's talk about the Shiv, Moderniser, Polyfills, and graceful degradation. Okay, so today's browsers we know don't support HTML5 and CSS3. The good news is they'll happily accept any HTML tag you give it. You can make up tags, and the browser will just say, okay, I accept that, and you can go ahead and even apply style to it with a CSS file. For example, Firefox doesn't have a problem if I created an Intertech tag. Hey, here's an Intertech tag, and it says, okay, cool, I'll display it in block format, and you can apply a style to it. Most browsers will treat it as an unknown tag and just says, all right, fine, it's part of the DOM. Except IE. Doggone IE. IE 6 through 8 says, I don't know what that is, so I'm not going to recognize it, and I'm not going to allow you to even touch it with your CSS code. So how do we handle this? Well, one little trick that John Resig, the original founder of jQuery, found was that if you went ahead and declared the actual controls by using a create element method off the document type, you could actually then go ahead and apply style to them. Basically, it automatically adds them to the DOM, and then Internet Explorer says, oh, look at that. There's new tags. Okay, now I can apply style to them. So what we do initially back in the old days is we'd use this special IE-specific script. You notice this condition here, this if less than IE9. That's a script that only works in Microsoft Internet Explorer. But we're basically saying if it's an earlier version of IE, before 9, we actually want to create all these different elements. Header, footer, nav, article section, and all the other ones, including canvas and audio and video. And then we could go ahead and apply styles to them. Please keep this in mind, folks. If I create a canvas object here by saying create element canvas, and I'm stating the obvious here, but that's not going to create a full-blown canvas object in IE8 that people can go ahead and draw cool pictures on, right? It's only declaring the tag and adding it to the DOM so that ultimately I can affect its appearance using the actual CSS script. Now, the creator of jQuery said this is ridiculous, us having to write those document.create objects every single time. So he created a special little script that we could include, and he called it the HTML5 Shiv, right? And you could go ahead and include this at the very top of your page. To put that if less than IE9, and then you'll include this famous HTML5 shiv.googlecode.com. This is their CDN for this. You can include it at the top of your page. And now all of a sudden, every browser out there, including older versions of IE, will recognize that tag, and then you can go ahead and stylize them. Like, for example, with CSS, you can draw a border around a canvas object. He admitted later on that he shouldn't have called it a shiv, because shiv is like a prison knife. It's really like a shiv, right? It's a shiv to bring that browser up to spec with all the others. So both can, of course, be used to shank IE. Let's do that in there. Now, polyfills are the great equalizer. Polyfills are really just JavaScript files making up for something that the browser doesn't support natively. Like, for example, in IE8, if you're still running IE8 because you're still running Windows XP, you can't play with the canvas object by default. Bummer. But you can make up for that if you use a polyfill. Polyfill sounds like something you patch a wall with. You got a crack in the wall, you use a little polyfill, right? That's actually where it got its name. They named it based off of something that could fill a wall, but we're actually patching the browser to make up for what it didn't support natively. We have to be careful when we use polyfills because polyfills can actually affect the performance of our site negatively. If we overdo on polyfills, it can bring a site to its knees, and nobody's going to come visit our pages no more. So we want to be careful when we use a polyfill. And let's take a look at some polyfills that are available. Now, mind you, these polyfills are free and generally open source as well. They are your friends, and they're there to help fill in where a browser can't do something. If you can get the browser to do it, it's always going to perform much faster than a JavaScript polyfill, and it'll do it with the greatest of ease and much more functionality than what a polyfill could do. This is a classic polyfill. It's one for the canvas object. And if you have IE 6 through 8 and you want canvas functionality, this is a free polyfill for that. And you would actually check to see if the browser is IE 8 or older, and then you would include this, and include this thing called the Explorer Canvas. It's available on the Google site, obviously, and this can bring the canvas functionality to earlier versions of IE. IE 9, by the way, does have support for canvas. You can go ahead and take advantage of that with that canvas tag, and we'll get into that shortly here. I have a code example for that. But this is really what a polyfill would look like. There's another one, too. Here's another one in case you're missing canvas and IE. Like the last one was just a JavaScript file you download. This one's based on a Flash object. So if you have Flash in an earlier version of IE 6 through 8, you can use this, which exposes the exact same API as the canvas object. And it can do a lot of the same drawing. Mind you, polyfills, especially these two here, may not have every single capability of the full-blown canvas object in the browser, but for simple graphics like business graphics, spark lines, charting and stuff, these will support you just fine. Pi, of course, is Progressive Internet Explorer, and again, it's another free library that can bring CSS3 behavior over to IE 6 through 9. Now, some people might assume, why not just 6 through 8? 9 does not have all support for CSS3 either. But with this free library, anybody can download. You go to css3pi.com. You can get some of that functionality in those older versions of IE. So if you need just a couple of corners rounded on your page in IE 7 or IE 8, this is perfect for you. You need 38 corners rounded, this is not a good solution. Okay? A lot of times what people will do is things such as style is they'll make sure that it looks great without the style being applied, and then they'll add in the CSS3 bells and whistles for those browsers that do support it, knowing fully well that they'll still gracefully degrade for the other users with the older browsers. That's what we want our websites to do. If they don't support an HTML5 feature or CSS3 feature, they should still work just fine without that functionality, and people should be able to still navigate the site. Test, test, test. Yep, Nope is a famous JavaScript library that's used for conditionally loading polyfills. It was used to determine if a browser supported a certain feature, load a polyfill, otherwise just load the regular JavaScript. Yep, Nope was so popular that they actually rolled it into another library, probably the most important library you can use as an HTML5 developer, and that's Moderniser. Moderniser, you can see there's no E in its name, and Moderniser is actually used to determine if a browser has a HTML5 or CSS3 feature. It'll just go ahead and use it. Otherwise, it can download one of your polyfills for you. Moderniser became so popular, and it's also helped supported by the people at Opera, that it includes the shiv. So if you're dealing with IE 6 through 8 and you're using Moderniser, you automatically have the shiv, which is pretty cool. As well, they decided to go ahead and include Yep, Nope. Because Yep, Nope works so similar to the way Moderniser did for checking its types and loading its polyfills, they went ahead and wrapped it right into the Moderniser.load method. So Moderniser also uses Yep, Nope. So not only do you get Moderniser, which is excellent for determining functionality, but you also get Yep, Nope and the shiv. This is basically a little snippet of JavaScript at the bottom here that's checking to see if the browser supports geolocation. If it does, great, we're going to use our little geo.js file, but if it doesn't support it, we're going to need to load that special polyfill for giving us the geolocation functionality, part of that API of HTML5. And you can see how we have our Yep, Nope and our actual test condition. So Moderniser does the test, and Yep, Nope does the actual conditional loading. typically what we used to do in the old days is Moderniser be in charge of doing the test, and then Nope was doing the loading of the polyfills. Well, now, of course, Moderniser has embraced Nope and has included it with it.